My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. And I need to say this slowly because this topic burns. How to live with another woman's husband. Married? How to live with him. Before anything else, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and comment where you're watching from. Because if you clicked this, you already know something hurts. You didn't come here because life is soft. You didn't come here because things are easy. You came here because you're tired, confused, angry, and trying to survive a situation nobody claps for. Let me be clear from the start. I am not here to judge you. I am not here to praise you. I am not here to decorate lies and call them love. I'm here to tell you the rules of the game nobody warns you about until it's already cutting you. And let me say this plainly. Living with another woman's husband is not for the weak. It is not romantic. It is not powerful. It is not glamorous. It is quiet pain. It is swallowed tears. It is pretending you're okay while slowly disappearing inside. And if you choose this life, or if this life found you, you better understand what you signed up for. Because this situation doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care how good you are. It doesn't care how patient you've been. It will hurt you anyway. Now, let me talk to you directly. Some of you are already involved. Some of you are thinking about it. Some of you are just curious. Some of you are married and want to understand the woman on the other side. Wherever you are, listen. Because once you step into this space, you lose the right to be surprised. I hear this all the time. I didn't think it would hurt this much. I didn't expect him to change. I didn't know I'd feel this lonely. But you knew. You just didn't want to accept it. So let's start with the first rule, the one nobody wants to hear. Rule number 1, prepare to be uncomfortable every single day. Not sometimes, not occasionally, every day. You will be uncomfortable when his phone rings. You will be uncomfortable when he goes quiet. You will be uncomfortable when plans change suddenly. And don't act shocked. You already know there is another woman. You already know there is another life. You already know there are conversations you will never hear. So when he steps outside to answer a call, when he lowers his voice, when he disappears emotionally, don't pretend this is new information. This is the cost of entry. And the emotional roller coaster. Let me talk about that. 1 minute, he's telling you how special you are, how understood he feels with you, how different this is. The next minute, he's telling her he loves her. And you sit there smiling like your chest isn't collapsing. That is not strength. That is survival mode. And survival mode drains you. Which brings me to rule number 2. You must have an end game. I don't care how good the moments feel. I don't care how intense the connection is. I don't care how lonely you were before him. What is the plan? How long are you staying? What are you getting out of this? When do you leave? Because if you don't decide when it ends, it will end you instead. Most people in this situation don't have an end game. They just float. They hope. They wait. And waiting in this kind of relationship is slow torture. Which brings me to the hardest truth of all. Rule number 3. He is not choosing you. I know you don't want to hear that. I know it hurts. I know you're thinking of exceptions. But exceptions don't build lives. The reality is this. His loyalty already exists, and it is not with you. No matter what he says, no matter how he looks at you, no matter how he complains about his marriage, if he wanted to leave, he would have left. And don't let him poison you with the oldest lie in the book. I'm only staying for the kids. That lie makes my blood boil. Because let me tell you something ugly and honest. If a man stays in a marriage for the kids, he is also staying for the comfort, the image, the routine, the safety. Kids are not the only reason. They're the excuse. And the sooner you accept that, the less foolish you'll feel later. Now, let me talk about something nobody prepares you for. Holidays, birthdays, Christmas, Eid, Thanksgiving, family weddings. These days are not yours. I don't care what he promises. I don't care what story he tells you. When those days come, you will be alone. He will be where he belongs, with his family. And you will sit there refreshing your phone, pretending you don't care, telling yourself you understand. But understanding doesn't stop the ache, which leads to another brutal rule. If his wife ever finds out about you, he will choose her. Always. Even if she kicks him out. Even if he sleeps on your couch for a while. Even if he cries to you. His goal will be to go back home. And even if she leaves him permanently, that does not mean he will choose you. You were the fantasy, not the future. And fantasies don't survive reality. Now listen to me carefully. Protect yourself. Emotionally, physically, biologically. If you are sleeping with a married man without a solid birth control plan, you are playing with fire and gasoline. A pregnancy does not make him yours. It makes your life harder. He does not want outside children, no matter what sweet words he uses. And when things explode, you will be the one standing alone. Another rule people hate. If you see him in public, keep walking. You don't know him, he doesn't know you. Do not smile, do not wave, do not freeze. Because he will not acknowledge you, and that moment will humiliate you if you're not prepared. This is the double life you agreed to. And here's one that destroys people slowly. Do not try to compete with his wife. Do not try to prove you're better. Do not try to convince him he chose wrong. He may listen, he may nod, he may even agree, but deep down, he already chose. And constantly pushing that conversation will make you unbearable to him. You are there for escape, not confrontation. And finally, for this part, listen to this with your whole chest. Do not bring him into your family. Do not introduce him to your children, because when he leaves, and he will, you will have to explain a disappearance you never had the right to promise permanence for. Children don't understand he was married. They understand absence, and absence scars. I'm going to stop here for now, because this truth is heavy. My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. And if this already hurts, it's because part of you knows I'm not lying. My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. And if you're still here, it means something inside you is already breaking, because nobody stays this long unless the truth is starting to feel louder than the lies you've been living with. Let me continue. There's something nobody tells you about living with another woman's husband. The loneliness is different. It's not the kind where you're physically alone. It's the kind where you're surrounded by someone and still feel invisible. He's there, but not fully. He's present, but never available. He listens, but only until his real life calls. And every time you accept that, you shrink a little. You tell yourself, this is temporary. You tell yourself, I'm strong enough. You tell yourself, at least he chooses me sometimes. But sometimes is not a life. Sometimes is crumbs. And crumbs don't feed a soul. Let me talk about waiting. Waiting is the silent killer in this situation. You wait for him to text, you wait for him to call, you wait for him to finish dinner. You wait for him to argue with his wife. You wait for him to sneak time for you. And before you realize it, your life is on pause. You stop planning, you stop dreaming, you stop demanding. You start adjusting yourself to fit into the cracks of someone else's marriage. That is not love. That is self-erasure. And the most painful part, you will defend him. You will defend him to your friends. You will defend him to your family. You will defend him to yourself. You'll say things like, you don't understand our connection. He's not like other men. Our situation is different. Every woman in this situation says that. Every single one. And I need you to hear this clearly because I'm angry for you now. Your situation is not special. Your pain is just familiar. Another rule, one that hurts to admit. You are living in secrecy, and secrecy changes you. You start lowering your voice in public. You start hiding your phone. You start deleting messages. You start lying without thinking. Not because you're a bad person, but because this situation demands silence, and silence eats at your self-respect. You stop feeling proud of your life. You stop sharing your happiness. You stop posting joy, because joy doesn't survive in hiding. Now, let me talk about hope, because hope is the most dangerous thing here. Hope sounds harmless. Hope sounds beautiful. But hope in the wrong place becomes poison. Hope tells you, maybe he'll leave. Maybe I just need to be patient. Maybe once the kids are older. Maybe after the business deal. Maybe after the holidays. And years pass, and nothing changes. Because hope keeps you quiet. Hope keeps you compliant. Hope keeps you from walking away. And let me tell you something that might hurt, but it will free you if you let it. If he wanted to leave, he would have already left. Men do not hesitate when they are ready. They move mountains, they sign papers, they burn bridges. When a man truly chooses you, you don't have to guess. You don't have to wait. You don't have to beg. Now, let me talk about anger, because anger is coming whether you want it or not. At first, you're calm, you're understanding, you're patient. Then one day, something small sets you off. A late reply, a canceled plan, a picture online. And suddenly you're angry, but you don't know where to put it. You can't yell at him, you can't demand more, you can't call his wife, you can't explain this to the world. So the anger turns inward. You start blaming yourself. You start questioning your worth. You start wondering why you weren't enough. And that is where the real damage begins. Because the problem was never that you weren't enough. The problem is that you were never supposed to fit into this space. This space was already occupied. Now listen carefully to this next rule because it saves lives. You cannot build a future in borrowed time. Borrowed time expires. Borrowed love disappears. Borrowed promises don't age well. Every plan you make with him is tentative. Every dream has an asterisk. Every one day is fragile. And living like that trains your nervous system to stay anxious. You're always waiting for the drop. And eventually your body gets tired. Your mind gets tired. Your heart gets tired. And one day you wake up and realize you've aged inside a situation that never belonged to you. Let me talk about dignity. Dignity is quiet. It's not loud pride. It's not arrogance. It's the inner knowing that you deserve peace. Living with a married man slowly erodes that knowing. Not because you're weak, but because the situation demands that you accept less than you want. And every time you accept less, your dignity whispers, this isn't it. But you ignore it until the whisper becomes a scream. I need to say this plainly because nobody else will. You are not wrong for wanting love. You are not wrong for wanting commitment. You are not wrong for wanting a life that is fully yours. What is wrong is sacrificing all of that for someone who cannot give it to you. And I know what you're thinking, but Roy, I love him. I know. Love is powerful, but love without availability becomes self-harm. And loving someone who is not free will always cost you more than it costs them. Always. I'm going to pause here because the next part is about walking away. And that requires strength most people don't think they have. My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. If this is hitting you hard, that's not weakness. That's clarity knocking. And this is where it gets real uncomfortable. Because knowing the truth is one thing. Walking away from what you feel is another. Let me talk to you about attachment, because attachment keeps you stuck long after logic has topped out. Attachment doesn't care about morals. It doesn't care about consequences. It doesn't care about dignity. Attachment only cares about relief. And this man, this married man, has become your relief. When you're lonely, he soothes you. When you feel unseen, he validates you. When life feels heavy, he distracts you. And not makes walking away feel like withdrawal. Your body panics, your chest tightens, your mind races. You tell yourself, I can't just stop talking to him. I can't just disappear. I'll lose my mind without him. That's not love talking. That's dependency. And dependency feels powerful until it starts costing you your future. Let me tell you something nobody admits out loud. You are doing emotional labor for a marriage that isn't yours. You absorb his stress. You absorb his frustration. You absorb his anger toward his wife. You become his safe place. But who is your safe place? Because when you cry, he can't show up fully. When you break down, he has limits. When you need reassurance, he gives it in pieces. And pieces don't heal. You give him emotional intimacy, support, understanding, and then he takes all of that home. That's the quiet theft nobody talks about. And over time, resentment starts growing in you. You resent his wife, even if you don't want to. You resent his kids, even if you feel guilty about it. You resent yourself for staying. And resentment poisons everything it touches. Now, let's talk about self-respect, because this is where the pain sharpens. Self-respect doesn't scream. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't beg. Self-respect waits patiently until it leaves. And one day, you'll notice something terrifying. You don't recognize yourself anymore. You used to speak freely. Now you calculate. You used to laugh loudly. Now you mute yourself. You used to dream boldly. Now you negotiate with reality. And you'll tell yourself it's maturity. It's not. It's compromise without reward. Let me say something that might sting. If you have to hide your relationship, it's already hurting you. Healthy love doesn't live in shadows. Healthy love doesn't require silence. Healthy love doesn't ask you to accept crumbs and call it patience. And I know some of you are thinking, but Roy, he treats me well. No, he treats you conveniently. There's a difference. Treating you well would mean choosing you fully, showing up publicly, making you a priority. Convenience feels good until you realize it's conditional. Now, let me talk about fear, because fear is what keeps you frozen. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear that this is the best you'll get. And fear whispers lies. It tells you at least you're loved, at least you're wanted, at least you're not alone. But ask yourself this honestly. Are you truly loved, or are you being used to escape someone else's reality? Because love doesn't make you feel like an option. Love doesn't make you wait in silence. Love doesn't ask you to disappear when it's inconvenient. Now, we reach the hardest part of this conversation, walking away. Walking away doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in small decisions. The decision to stop answering immediately. The decision to stop rearranging your life. The decision to stop waiting. Walking away is choosing yourself repeatedly, even when it hurts. And yes, it will hurt. You will grieve. You will miss him. You will question yourself. But let me tell you something powerful. The pain of leaving hurts once. The pain of staying hurts every day. Choose your pain.
And here's the part nobody tells you about leaving. You don't just lose him, you lose the version of yourself that believed this could work. And that loss deserves mourning. But on the other side of that mourning is clarity. You start sleeping better, you start breathing deeper, you start making plans without checking your phone. And slowly your dignity comes back. Not all at once, piece by piece. And one day you wake up and realize something quietly miraculous. You are free. Free from secrecy, free from waiting, free from borrowed love. And that freedom feels unfamiliar at first. But unfamiliar doesn't mean wrong. It means you're healing. Let me leave you with this truth. You are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You are not selfish for wanting a full life. You just chose someone who couldn't give it to you. And choosing differently is not failure. It's courage. My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. And if this made you angry, sad, or uncomfortable, that's not a bad thing. That's awareness. And this is the part where the anger stops being loud and starts being honest. Because after all the advice, after all the rules, after all the warnings, there's a moment when you sit alone and realize something terrifying. You knew this wasn't right. You just hoped it would hurt less if you stayed. And I need to talk to you about self-betrayal, because this is what it becomes if you're not careful. Self-betrayal isn't dramatic, it's quiet. It's saying it's okay when it's not. It's laughing when your chest is tight. It's agreeing to terms you never wanted. Every time you silence yourself to keep him, you abandon yourself a little more. And that abandonment adds up.
One day, you'll look in the mirror and feel disconnected from the person staring back at you, not because you're broken, but because you've been living out of alignment with your truth. Let me talk about time, because time is the most expensive thing you're spending here. You don't feel it day to day, you feel it in years. Years where you could have been building something real. Years where you could have been loved out loud. Years where you could have been chosen without hesitation. Instead, you've been negotiating access to someone else's husband. And I don't say that to shame you. I say it to wake you up. Because time doesn't come back with apologies. Now let me talk about comparison, because comparison will destroy your peace if you let it. You compare yourself to his wife, her body, her life, her position. You ask yourself questions that don't have answers. Why her and not me? What does she have that I don't? If I were better, would he leave? Stop. That comparison is a trap, because the truth is not about better or worse. It's about chosen versus available. She was chosen when he made vows. You are available when he needs escape. And no amount of perfection turns availability into commitment. Now I need to say something that might sting deeply. You are carrying shame that doesn't belong to you alone. This situation took two people to exist, but somehow the weight lands heavier on you. You judge yourself harder, you punish yourself more, and that shame keeps you quiet. Shame tells you you can't complain, you chose this, you don't deserve better. That is a lie. You can acknowledge your part without destroying your worth. And here's another truth people avoid. You don't need to be punished to learn. Pain is not proof of growth. You don't need to suffer endlessly to earn a better life. You just need to decide that this chapter is over. Now let me talk about boundaries, because boundaries are where your power returns. A boundary is not an ultimatum. It's not a threat. It's a decision. It sounds like this. I can't be in a relationship with someone who is not free. I want more than what you can offer. I'm choosing to step away. No arguing, no convincing, no explaining yourself into exhaustion. Just clarity. And yes, he will resist.
He will say he needs time. He will say you're pressuring him. He will say you're overreacting. That's because your boundary disrupts his comfort, and discomfort always reveals truth. Let me be very clear here. If setting a boundary makes him disappear, he was never capable of meeting it. And losing someone who can't meet your needs is not a loss, it's alignment. Now let me talk about grief, because grief is coming whether you stay or go. If you stay, you grieve slowly. If you leave, you grieve intensely, but honestly. Grief is not weakness, it's the price of attachment. And you're allowed to grieve what you hoped this could be. You're allowed to grieve the fantasy. You're allowed to grieve the connection. You're allowed to grieve the version of yourself that believed. But don't confuse grief with regret. Regret is staying when you knew better. Grief is leaving and honoring what you felt. And grief passes, regret lingers. Now listen to this part carefully because it matters. There is a version of you on the other side of this that is calmer, stronger, clearer. A version of you that doesn't check their phone in fear. A version of you that doesn't hide. A version of you that doesn't negotiate for love. That version exists, but you can't reach her while you're still here. You have to walk away from what hurts to make space for what heals. And I know you're scared. I know you're thinking, what if I end up alone? What if this was my chance? What if I never feel this again? Let me answer that with honesty. Being alone is painful, but being lonely in a relationship is worse. This wasn't your only chance. It was just the one you clung to because it was familiar. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. But peace is waiting. It's just on the other side of courage. My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. And if you're still listening, it's because something inside you is ready to change, even if you don't know how yet. One day, you'll look in the mirror and feel disconnected from the person staring back at you. Not because you're broken, but because you've been living out of alignment with your truth. Let me talk about time, because time is the most expensive thing you're spending here. You don't feel it day to day, you feel it in years. Years where you could have been building something real. Years where you could have been loved out loud. Years where you could have been chosen without hesitation. Instead, you've been negotiating access to someone else's husband. And I don't say that to shame you. I say it to wake you up. Because time doesn't come back with apologies. Now let me talk about comparison, because comparison will destroy your peace if you let it. You compare yourself to his wife, her body, her life, her position. You ask yourself questions that don't have answers. Why her and not me? What does she have that I don't? If I were better, would he leave? Stop. That comparison is a trap, because the truth is not about better or worse. It's about chosen versus available. She was chosen when he made vows. You are available when he needs escape. And no amount of perfection turns availability into commitment. Now I need to say something that might sting deeply. You are carrying shame that doesn't belong to you alone. This situation took two people to exist, but somehow the weight lands heavier on you. You judge yourself harder, you punish yourself more, and that shame keeps you quiet. Shame tells you you can't complain, you chose this, you don't deserve better. That is a lie. You can acknowledge your part without destroying your worth. And here's another truth people avoid. You don't need to be punished to learn. Pain is not proof of growth. You don't need to suffer endlessly to earn a better life. You just need to decide that this chapter is over. Now let me talk about boundaries, because boundaries are where your power returns. A boundary is not an ultimatum. It's not a threat. It's a decision. It sounds like this. I can't be in a relationship with someone who is not free. I want more than what you can offer. I'm choosing to step away. No arguing, no convincing, no explaining yourself into exhaustion. Just clarity. And yes, he will resist. He will say he needs time. He will say you're pressuring him. He will say you're overreacting. That's because your boundary disrupts his comfort, and discomfort always reveals truth. Let me be very clear here. If setting a boundary makes him disappear, he was never capable of meeting it. And losing someone who can't meet your needs is not a loss, it's alignment. Now let me talk about grief, because grief is coming whether you stay or go. If you stay, you grieve slowly. If you leave, you grieve intensely, but honestly. Grief is not weakness, it's the price of attachment. And you're allowed to grieve what you hoped this could be. You're allowed to grieve the fantasy. You're allowed to grieve the connection. You're allowed to grieve the version of yourself that believed. But don't confuse grief with regret. Regret is staying when you knew better. Grief is leaving and honoring what you felt. And grief passes, regret lingers. Now listen to this part carefully because it matters. There is a version of you on the other side of this that is calmer, stronger, clearer. A version of you that doesn't check their phone in fear. A version of you that doesn't hide. A version of you that doesn't negotiate for love. That version exists, but you can't reach her while you're still here. You have to walk away from what hurts to make space for what heals. And I know you're scared. I know you're thinking, what if I end up alone? What if this was my chance? What if I never feel this again? Let me answer that with honesty. Being alone is painful, but being lonely in a relationship is worse. This wasn't your only chance. It was just the one you clung to because it was familiar. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. But peace is waiting. It's just on the other side of courage. My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. And if you're still listening, it's because something inside you is ready to change, even if you don't know how yet. And this is the part where I stop trying to convince you and start telling you the truth that stays with you at night. Because at some point, advice stops working. Logic stops landing. Even pain starts to feel familiar. And what you're really asking yourself is not, is this wrong? You already know it is. What you're asking is, why am I still here? And that question deserves an honest answer. You're still here because this relationship feeds a wound. It feeds the wound of feeling chosen, even temporarily. It feeds the wound of being desired, even secretly. It feeds the wound of not wanting to feel alone. And wounds don't heal when you keep touching them. They heal when you stop reopening them. But healing is quiet, and chaos feels alive. Let me talk to you about chaos addiction, because nobody names it. When your nervous system has lived in instability for a long time, peace feels boring. You're used to the highs and lows, the waiting and the relief, the anxiety and the reassurance. That emotional roller coaster becomes your normal. So when someone offers consistency, it feels strange, flat, unexciting, and you mistake calm for lack of connection. But calm is what your body has been begging for. Now let me talk about identity, because this situation slowly steals it. You stop introducing yourself honestly. You stop answering questions fully. You start editing your life. You are no longer just you. You are the secret, the other woman, the one who waits, the one who understands. And none of those roles were meant to be permanent. You weren't born to live on the margins of someone else's life. You were born to be central in your own. But living with a married man trains you to accept the sidelines. And over time, you stop asking for more because asking feels embarrassing. You think, I knew what this was. Yes, but knowing doesn't mean you don't deserve better. Now let me say something that may sound harsh, but it's real. He is not confused. You are. He knows exactly where his life is. He knows what he's choosing. He knows what he's risking. You're the one holding uncertainty. You're the one wondering if today will be different. You're the one reading between lines. You're the one analyzing tone and timing. Clarity is power, and the person with the most clarity usually has the most control. Right now, that's him, because ambiguity benefits him. It gives him access to you without accountability. And I need you to hear this clearly. If a man can have you without changing his life, he will. That doesn't make him evil. It makes him human. But it does make this situation dangerous for you. Now let's talk about self-trust, because that's what you're losing. You ignore your intuition. You override your discomfort. You tell yourself stories to make staying easier. And every time you do that, your inner voice gets quieter until one day you don't recognize it anymore. And that's when people get stuck for years. Because when you don't trust yourself, you rely on others to decide for you, and he will never decide in your favor. Not because you're unworthy, but because choosing you would cost him everything. And he's not willing to pay that price. Now, let me say something that may sound harsh, but it's real. Dignity. Dignity doesn't ask you to be perfect. It doesn't ask you to be flawless. It asks you to stop participating in what diminishes you. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't love him. It meant you loved yourself enough to stop bleeding quietly. And yes, you will miss him. You will miss the conversations. You will miss the closeness. You will miss the way he made you feel special. But missing someone is not a reason to stay. Missing is part of leaving, and leaving is part of becoming whole again. Let me tell you what happens after you walk away. At first, it's unbearable. The silence is loud. Your phone feels heavier. Your evenings feel empty. You'll want to go back just to make the feelings stop. That's normal. But if you stay gone, if you resist the urge to numb the pain, something shifts. Your thoughts slow down. Your chest loosens. Your sleep improves. And one day, without realizing when it happened, you feel proud again. Proud that you chose yourself. Proud that you didn't settle. Proud that you didn't need to be hidden to be loved. That pride is quiet, but it's solid. And solid things last.
Now, I want to leave you with this truth, and I need you to sit with it. You are not behind in life. You are not running out of time. You are not foolish for wanting love. You are just at a crossroads. One path keeps you small but comfortable. The other scares you but leads to peace. And peace is worth the fear. My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. And if this made your chest feel heavy, it's because part of you already knows what needs to happen next. And this is where I end it. Not with softness, not with motivation quotes, but with truth. Because at the end of all this talking, all this anger, all this pain, there is only one question that matters. How long are you willing to disappear for someone else's comfort? That's it. Not do you love him, not does he love you, not what if one day. How long? How long will you accept half presence? How long will you live in secrecy? How long will you explain a situation that keeps shrinking you? How long will you betray your own needs to protect someone else's marriage? Because every day you stay, you are making a decision, even if you don't call it that. And I need you to understand something that hurts but frees you. No one is coming to save you from this situation. Not him, not time, not patience, not hope. The only person who can end this is you. And ending it doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally told yourself the truth. You were not wrong for wanting love. You were not weak for staying. You were not stupid for believing. But you will betray yourself if you keep ignoring what this has already cost you. Cost you peace, cost you time, cost you dignity, cost you parts of yourself you didn't even realize you were giving away.
You deserve a life where you don't have to wait. You deserve a love that doesn't hide. You deserve to be chosen without conditions. And if you stay in a place where you are always second, always secret, always adjusting, one day you will wake up and realize you gave your best years to someone else's leftovers. I say this with anger because I've seen it. I say this with pain because I've lived close enough to it. And I say this with honesty because you deserve that more than comfort. Let this be the moment you stop lying to yourself. Let this be the moment you choose clarity over chaos, peace over intensity, self-respect over temporary relief. You don't need to hate him. You don't need to expose him. You don't need revenge. You just need to walk away with your head up. That is strength. That is healing. That is the beginning of a life that finally belongs to you. My name is Roy. I'm 39 years old. And if this made your chest feel heavy, it's because part of you already knows what needs to happen next. And this is where I end it. Not with softness, not with motivation quotes, but with truth. Because at the end of all this talking, all this anger, all this pain, there is only one question that matters. How long are you willing to disappear for someone else's comfort? That's it. Not do you love him, not does he love you, not what if one day. How long?